Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and we got a great show for you guys today because, well, Sidney Crosby is all the way back. Does that mean that this new top line of Crosby, Malkin, and Rickard Rakell is here to stay? We'll talk about why that could be a good idea and why it could be not such a good idea. But if so, if they do stay, how should the bottom nine look? Because the bottom nine, well, it really hasn't lived up to the expectation that was set on it over the last handful of games since they made this switch. So what would we do if we were head coach Mike Sullivan? What line configurations would we muster up if we had the opportunity? And then we'll close this out with a discussion about a handful of players on the Penguins that have yet to light the lamp. Who will be the first and who will be the last to get on the score sheet this season? Let's get started. And let's kick things off with the captain, Sidney Crosby, who seemingly has put that slow start far in the rearview mirror. 1 week ago today, Mike Sullivan made the decision to move Evgeni Malkin up to that top line. And we all said, well, we've never really seen this. This has been a kind of desperation card to be played for Mike Sullivan throughout his 10 years with the Penguins. But now they're doing it to start games. Maybe this is desperation. Maybe they are just that desperate to get the Penguins captain going. And since then, I mean, this is all they've done. 3 games played. They've outshot their opponents at 5-on-5 by a total of 35-20. They've outchanced their opponents 33-25. And they've just outscored them 4-0 in the past 3 games. Sidney Crosby himself, before this switch, had 10 games played, 7 points, only one of them being a goal. And since then, 3 games played, 7 points, and 4 of them being a goal, enough to be named the NHL's 3rd star of the week this past week. So, Horwat, to start out the show with you, have your thoughts changed at all? Because both of us said this wasn't really a long-term solution. It hasn't been long-term. But now that we've seen it in 3 games, and the Penguins have a winning record in those 3 games, have you changed your tune? Have you changed your opinion at all? Do you think this is something they could go with for a longer period?
No, it's still not something that should be sustained. It's good that maybe it feels like a wake-up call to some people. Obviously, it's helped Sidney Crosby out quite a bit and has gotten him back on to Sidney Crosby things. But overall, I just don't see this being the long-term solution. However, if they go back to Evgeni Malkin in his normal spot and things take the dips again, by all means, you now know that you can do that and it might work longer than expected. So I'd say just for the time being, no, it can't be the sustainable. It can't be the sustainable lineup. It can't be the one that sticks and stays, but it is a break glass in case of emergency type situation that, you've broken once, but you know what? It doesn't mean the extinguisher has been totally used. So you still have time to go back to that well again if need be. It works at least, and that's something.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you there. I don't think this is something that you could say, hey, well, set it in stone. The rest of the season, we're going to keep Sidney Crosby with Evgeni Malkin unless, it doesn't work. But at the same time, ride it out as long as it does work. I understand that the 2 teams that you beat were not teams that are right now playing the best of hockey, right? You beat an Anaheim Ducks team that is young and inexperienced, and you beat a Montreal Canadiens team that is young and inexperienced, and one of the 4 teams that you had beaten prior to going on this short little 2-game winning streak. So I get it. They're winning. I get it. Keep it going, especially because it has waked Crosby up to a level in which we haven't seen yet this season. But at the same time, the downfalls are there, and the downfalls are as expected, and that's the bottom 9. We're going to get to them in a little bit, but I mean, just as a whole, the bottom 9 has been outshot 43-41 since this experiment started, and they've been outscored 5-0. So even in that, they've given up 5 goals from the bottom 9. They've only scored 4 goals from the top 9. Sure, it definitely helps out that you have the special teams working out in your favor, but as a whole, at 5-on-5, this is just not something that, unless you can get that bottom 9 to kind of kickstart and find a groove, it's not something that you're going to be able to roll out against the top teams in your division. And I mean, they got a matchup with Carolina coming up, and that's going to be an opportunity to showcase, hey, can this work against top tier talent? Because tonight you're going up against an Islanders team that's beat up a little bit. So I don't know if that's really a litmus test, but once you go up against your Carolinas, once you go up against the teams that are closer to the top of the divisions to this point of the season, that's when you're going to get to find out, hey, is this something that can actually work throughout a season? And is this something that can actually work against the best teams in our division and in our conference?
You even have the Capitals coming up soon too. It's going to be the crunch time whenever you start playing those better teams, because the Penguins have collected a couple of wins here and there this season. They've all been against lesser opponents. Every time they played a good team or a playoff caliber team, it hasn't been there. It has not been good. And just you look at this lineup and it looks fun seeing Crosby playing next to Malkin, but then the rest of the lineup is just it looks like a mishmash of names. Mm-hmm. It's a first line and then 3/3, maybe a fourth. It's tough. It can be something because it is names. Mm-hmm. There is potential, but no one's reaching their potential anymore, it seems. I mean, Lars Eller is definitely still doing the thing and is still pretty solid. I mean, we'll get into some of the names that the potential just hasn't been reached for quite a few of these guys.
Yeah, and you can tell that Mike Sullivan feels the same way, because in every one of these games, he has shuffled the bottom 6 or the bottom 9. I keep forgetting to say it's bottom 9. Mm-hmm. But he's shuffled them in game, before games, between games. He just continues to hit that shuffle button and just continuing to make sure that first line stays intact. And the rest, he's just looking for answers. He's looking for something to work. We'll see if we can help him out here in a couple minutes in our second segment. But the one weird thing about this top line, because it has been successful, we talked about the stats, we talked about the figures, we talked about Sidney Crosby bouncing back in a massive way and how important that is for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, 2 game-winning goals in the past week has been lighting the score sheet on fire. Evgeni Malkin has 0 points in that time. Obviously, very strange anomaly that one line mate has 7 points, the other has 0, but does that worry you at all? Or, I mean, I feel like there's no way that's going to persist if those guys stay on the same line together.
No, that certainly shouldn't persist if they stay on the same line. And it's part of the reason why I think you're okay if you send Malkin back to the second line. It's not like he's producing, quote unquote, on the first, but he's clearly...
He's opened things up for Sid, I think.
Yeah, he's opening things up, and there's good things to be had there. But it is at least something. It's an eyebrow raiser to see that sort of thing, because you figure, Crosby's got 7 points playing on the top line next to Evgeni Malkin. Well, how many does he have then? 0 is a shocking number, straight up. So, I don't know about the concern level of it.
No,
because he's up there with a certain role. However, it makes, at least I get he's opening space and I get he's doing other different things, away from the puck on the first line. It's still, at least in my head, makes sense if that's the case to move him back to the second line if you need to. It makes the adjustments of the lineup easier to handle, essentially.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, regardless of what you do with that top line, you need to find answers in the bottom 9, but I'm not concerned at all about Malkin having 0 points. I mean, we've seen him go on a couple stretches of 0 points, or one stretch of 0 points this season. He came back and scored 3 against the Vancouver Canucks. Now he hasn't scored in a handful of games. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out there tonight, especially because it's Crosby versus the Islanders. If Malkin's on Crosby's line, I wouldn't be surprised if they all eat. Speaking of they all, the one name we haven't mentioned on this line, kind of that third factor, but somebody who is not a passenger. That's what I said yesterday. I'm like, a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's Crosby and Malkin, but at the same time, they also put Rickard Rakell with Sidney Crosby for the first time that we've seen an extended look of those guys together. Rakell and Crosby just works. It's something that I think we've all talked about and say, why do they continue to separate those two whenever they make magic when they're together? Rakell has 3 points in those 3 games, 2 goals, 1 assist. I think that he is driving play just as much as the other two, and I think he's just as big of a factor as those other two. So even if they take Malkin off that line, you need to keep Rakell up there regardless of what you do on the left side.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I can kind of agree with that. I'm more in the vein of Bryan Rust should be up there whenever he returns to health.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing that I've learned over the last couple of years, though, is just that these guys, no matter how you shuffle them in that top 6, the Malkin, Crosby, Rakell, Rust, and whoever else, they're all pretty capable of playing with each other.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily matter whichever combination it is. So I just think if much in the way of what we already discussed with Evgeni Malkin and playing on the first line or the second line, if it's not working, you can go back to it and you can make that change no problem. Those Rust and Rakell seem pretty interchangeable, and I think Rakell definitely has better games, better looks whenever he's playing with Crosby. But so too does Rust. And let's just be honest, who do you expect? I don't know how to put it. It's tough because they're essentially both going to produce with Crosby, and Malkin might be a question mark. Whichever one might produce with Malkin should be with him, but I think that might be Rakell. It's just tough to tell.
See, yeah, I would go with Bryan Rust. There's more of a history there, and I just think that Rust's game is a little bit more... what's the best way to put this? Rust's game is more transferable to both Malkin and Crosby, I think. Rakell with Crosby, there's just a slightly different feel to it than when he's with Malkin, whereas with Rust, it feels like he's playing his game regardless of who he's with. So for that reason, I would put him with Malkin, but we can talk about that a little bit more in our next segment, where we're going to put together the Penguins' bottom nine. Mike Sullivan has been shuffling things around. We're going to shuffle them for him and see if you agree with our lineup combinations for the bottom nine. Let's continue this episode with those line combinations in the bottom nine. Here's what Mike Sullivan put together yesterday during Penguins practice, and then we'll talk about what we would do on those bottom nine. The second line yesterday in practice was Drew O'Connor, Lars Eller, and Cody Glass. Third line was Michael Bunting, Noel Chari, and Jesse Puljujärvi. And the fourth line was Kevin Hayes, Blake Lizotte, and Anthony Beauvillier. Let's go line by line here and get our line combinations in. Horwat, let's start with the second line. What would you put together with a second line if it is Malkin, Crosby, Rakell as your top line?
It's extremely tough, I think. Just because I really liked what I saw last year, I'm already making a pretty decent change, but I'm putting Valtteri Puustinen back in this lineup. And I would think I would probably roll with an Eller line of centering O'Connor and Puustinen. I mean, Puustinen hasn't played much this year, but he's also already scored. I think he's got... You give him a little bit more of a consistent stretch in the lineup, and I liked what I saw from him last year. The Penguins obviously think highly of him, and I personally, at least, want to see what he can do in the NHL on a full-time basis, kind of like what he had last year, but legitimately sustained. And this seems like a good opportunity to put him in the lineup. And, I know someone will have to come out, and we'll get to that when we get to it. Yeah.
I like the O'Connor-Eller thing. I think all of us agree that that's probably your best options at second center and second left wing right now. But instead of Puustinen, I'm putting Jesse Puljujärvi there on that second line. I think Puljujärvi and O'Connor as a combination on the forecheck could create some havoc in that offensive zone, and I think it could create some turnovers and opportunities for a second line. I like Eller being the setup man for both. He's also the defensive conscious of a line that has a lot of defensive conscientiousness on it, right? Drew O'Connor's a penalty killer for the Penguins. Jesse Puljujärvi is certainly able to hold his own in the defensive end of the ice, and I think that has to be part of the equation here whenever you're putting together these lines, especially with how bad the team defense has been to this point in the season. So I like O'Connor. I like Eller. I agree with you on those, but I'm putting Jesse Puljujärvi there simply because, and I'll get to this more when I talk about the line that he's actually on, simply because I think Puustinen kind of fades into the background a little bit too much. And part of that is going to be, he's not quite to that level yet where he can continue to stay relevant through an entire game, continue to make good plays through an entire game. And he certainly doesn't have the physicality to be present like a guy like a Blake Lizotte or a Noel Chari can during games, or even a guy like Michael Bunting when nothing's working. If he has his physicality, he's evident. You can see him on the ice. That doesn't happen with Valtteri Puustinen. So I think you need to put him with players that kind of fit that mold a little bit more to help keep him engaged, help keep him kind of in the action a little bit more. Puljujärvi, I don't think you need anything like that. Puljujärvi brings that physicality with him. He's had a good skating stride this year. He did fade to the background after a hot start, but I think he needs to be afforded the opportunity to kind of bounce back up, get back up the other hill, out the other side of this valley that he's currently in. And I think he can really do it if you put him on that second line. And obviously, his one goal this year against the Buffalo Sabres, you saw that he has the talent to be a guy that can finish in a top six role. So even though this isn't really a top six, it's a top line, bottom line situation, I like Puljujärvi on that second line.
And I don't hate that. I don't hate Puljujärvi getting more opportunity. He's another guy that I want to see in the lineup, period.
Yeah.
I get there's a lot of names stacked up in the depth chart and forcing a ton of decision making.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel the decision should be Pusin and Puljujärvi at consistently in the NHL lineup wherever they fall, just as long as they're playing and getting reasonable ice time for at least for Puljujärvi what he deserves and for Pusin what he can earn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, speaking of Pusin, let's just go to the third line now because that's where I have him. I have him at third line right wing next to Cody Glass and Michael Bunting. I think if you put that third line out there, again, how good is it defensively? That depends. Cody Glass has been good in both ends this year. Cody Glass has been really good, really everywhere this year. We'll talk about him in the third segment because he hasn't scored a goal. Neither has Michael Bunting. But I think this is a line that I put out there, and I expect to be able to get results. I mean, Michael Bunting is going to bring a little bit of havoc, and I think that could open up some space for Valtteri Puustinen. And like I mentioned when talking about the last line, Puustinen just fades into the background too much. He won't if he's with Cody Glass and Michael Bunting, two guys that, well, Bunting has faded to the back, and that's when you know he's not playing his game. But recently, I mean, 5 shots on goal in Thursday's game against the Ducks, 2 shots on goal, but was very physical, and he's starting to play that antagonistic style, which means he's getting back to his game. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of that. I think him and Glass are a good pairing, and I think Puustinen could be a good third piece there. If Glass can start setting him up, I think that could be a third line that starts to create a little bit more offensively for you in the bottom 6.
And I'm with you on, Glass centering Bunting, but then, obviously I would just keep Puljujärvi there. I think that was clear whenever I had Puustinen in there, and it's essentially the same things you said, just swapping the fins on the right wing.
Yeah. Now, I think that means our fourth line is probably going to be the same, and we're probably going to have the same healthy scratch. Beauvillier is not in my lineup. Is he in yours?
Nope.
No. Okay, so why do you have Beauvillier taken out of yours?
Because I want Puustinen in the lineup, and it's tough to fill. Because I want Puustinen and Puljujärvi in this lineup, and it is tough to sort of shoehorn all these names in, and someone just needs to be the odd man out. And so far this year, aside from spurts of something, the odd man out has appeared to be Anthony Beauvillier, and from pretty much from this moment he was signed, I think a lot of people were writing him off right away. And unlike Geno Smith, he wrote back. Anthony Beauvillier has not performed up to expectations completely, and there's still a chance he can earn his way back into the lineup for sure. It might just take some work.
Yeah, when I look at Beauvillier's game so far this season, it reads to me, and again, a lot of people made this comparison preseason, it reads to me Carl Hagelin, but less impactful. So whenever I look at that, and I too have Puustinen in over him, I have Puljujärvi in it over him, and there's really no argument to be made with Hayes, Lizotte, and Achari, who is my fourth line, and I'm presuming your fourth line as well. Yeah. There's no argument to be had. I mean, those guys kill penalties. Beauvillier can, but at the same time, he doesn't bring the physicality that Achari brings. He doesn't bring the shot blocking that Achari brings. He doesn't bring that veteran poise that Kevin Hayes has shown, even whenever he's gone on these spurts where he hasn't been able to create much offensively. He still shows when he has the puck on his stick that he's going to make the right decision 9 times out of 10. And Blake Lizotte, I think we all knew as soon as he got back into the lineup, coming back from that concussion, he wasn't getting taken out, right? 2 games played. Now he has that empty net goal. I think he is starting to build a little bit more. It's going to take him some time because he missed so much time due to a concussion. He's going to build and continue to get better. But because of that, I haven't been impressed with Beauvillier. I don't think this is a guy that, you have to bend over backwards to keep in the lineup, although it seems like that might be the case with Sullivan.
Yeah, it just hasn't been impressive. And when there are so many cooks in the kitchen, someone's got to be removed. It won't be easy. And not only are there so many cooks in the kitchen, we might see the season debut of Matt Nieto soon. So let's just throw another wrench into this just to make things even more difficult. Mm-hmm. I don't know how long he stays in the lineup, but, coming back from health after been a year? Yeah, it's been a year. You expect the Penguins to, not necessarily do the right thing by him by getting him into the lineup, but seeing what they have in him after a year off and seeing if maybe there's some jump in his game and he can provide something new to the bottom 6, something fresh that, I mean, we kind of know what we have in him after what he did last year. It's just a new year, a bit of a new look. Maybe something changes. Who knows? But I mean, the Penguins are going to put him in the lineup, and we'll see how long he's there for, essentially.
Yeah, the last time Matt Nieto suited up for a game was November 30th of
Okay.
2023, a game in which the Penguins defeated the Tampa Bay Lightning and Tristan Jarry scored a goalie goal.
Yeah.
So that is the last we've seen of Matt Nieto. He is, as you kind of alluded to, on the road trip with the Penguins, so his return could be coming soon. Who else is on the road trip? That's Bryan Rust, trying to come back from a lower body injury, and that is a player that, without a doubt, when he is healthy, he will be in this lineup. So the question becomes, Horwat, to close out this segment, where does Bryan Rust fit when he returns? Do you put him on that top line? Like you kind of said you might. Is that where you put him, and how does that shake out the rest of the lineup once you do?
You know, the more I think about it, the more I probably would put Rust on the second line. But when he does return, I wouldn't be shocked to. Here's the thing. I would say if he returns soonish, maybe you give him that shot of Crosby, Malkin, Rust on the first line. You go Raquel on the second and just keep everything sort of the same. Plunk Raquel down a line. However, I would mostly expect when Rust returns, the lineup to kind of go back to normal. Like Malkin would get sent to the second. Maybe that's where Rust joins them.
Mm-hmm.
And everything filters out to its normal look before. Because, again, Malkin next to Crosby feels and felt a bit like an experiment for now.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's breeded some success, but I'd say for now it's the experiment. And then if the success doesn't follow when Rust returns, go back to it. And, again, just sort of reshuffle the lines from there. That's just how I think I'd put it. Like once Rust returns, the likely option is the lines just go back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
However, if it doesn't work, let's have some fun again.
Yeah, I think that for right now, Mike Sullivan is pretty married to this idea of, hey, we're going to keep Malkin and Crosby together until it stops working, or until the bottom nine is just so bad that we can't continue to have nobody as a second line. I mean, not nobody, but Lars Eller we were talking about Lars Eller fitting more as a fourth line center this offseason. Right now, he's been the second line center for the last, 3 games, and that's not due to injury. So if it gets to the point where you're saying, okay, we need to spread the scoring out like desperately again, I think they switch that. But as of right now, it's been working. So I'm going to go with the fact that it's been working. And if Bryan Rust returns, say probably not tonight, but say, later in this road trip, I just plop him on that second line right wing and I run O'Connor, Eller, and Rust. And I think that probably does a good bit for that line when it comes to creating offense. And certainly that line will then be one of probably your better shutdown lines as well, with all three of them being, pretty good penalty killers at the NHL level. And then Puljujarvi gets bumped off that line. I think it's just whoever's playing better between him and Puustinen. I would lean towards, yes, the Puljujarvi. I think right now he just brings a little bit more to the table than Valtteri Puustinen can. But again, it's a tough decision because then once Nieto comes back, then what do you do, right? Maybe you take out Puustinen and you move Glass over to the wing. There's a lot of moving and shaking that can happen if both Rust and Nieto become healthy on this road trip. And it's gonna cost something. And let's all forget, Mike Sullivan continues to put Anthony Beauvillier in the lineup, which is a decision that is continuing to get more and more questionable as time goes on. But that's our bottom nine. That's how we would construct it. Let us know in the comment section how you would construct the bottom nine. That is, if they continue to keep Malkin, Crosby, Raquel on that top unit. Here's what Mike Sullivan ran yesterday in practice and what you can expect likely to happen later tonight against the New York Islanders. Drew O'Connor, Lars Eller, and Cody Glass is your second line. Bunting, Achari, and Puljujarvi as your third. And then Hayes, Lizotte, and Anthony Beauvillier as your fourth line. There were no changes to the blue line, mind you, and you can expect probably another opportunity for Alex Nedeljkovic, who has been the hot hand for the Penguins over the past 2 games. Let's close things out here talking a little bit about 2 players that haven't been able to light the lamp. For the Penguins, 15 different players have contributed goals so far this season. Only 7 players have suited up for a game and not scored a goal. We're going to eliminate Ryan Shea because he's only played 2 games this season. We're going to eliminate Rutger McGroarty because he's only played 3 games this season, which leaves 2 forwards. And let's start that conversation there. Michael Bunting has yet to score a goal. Cody Glass has yet to score a goal. Everybody else, including Blake Lizotte, who has played 2 games, has lit the lamp. Again, outside of McGroarty, who only played 3. Which of these 2 forwards, Horwat, do you believe finds the score sheet first?
I would hope, for the sake of the team, it's Michael Bunting.
Mm.
Don't get me wrong, Cody Glass is playing very well and might be the answer. But I would hope, for the sake of the team and the sanity of everyone around it, Michael Bunting finds the back of the net, gets the monkey off his back, and finds his game again. Turns him back into what he was at the end of last season. Cody Glass is playing well and not scoring. So I think there's a bit more of a bet. He's fine for now. We'll get to the goal scoring later. Mm-hmm. I just feel Michael Bunting needs it. I get they're both without a goal and both playing in 12 games and both -5s, by the way. Maybe it's just getting to the net for Bunting. It is just getting to his game. That's all he needs to sort of find what he needs. Just get the one. A lot of times with hockey players, it is just getting the one. And next thing you know, you're on a roll. And that's what the Penguins need from him specifically, especially if they want to put the lineup back to where it's normal and where he's next to Malkin, night in and night out.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, it's kind of crazy. Every year there's a top 6 forward that just is far below expectations. 2 years ago, it was Bryan Rust right after he signed that contract. Remember, everybody was like, wow, he's struggling this year. You paid him and he's struggling. Last year, it was Rickard Rakell, and you can say Riley Smith as well. And now this year, it's Michael Bunting. He had 6 goals in 21 games played with the Penguins last season. He has 1 assist. That's it. 1 assist this season so far. Now, he does have 7 shots on goal in the last 2 games played. It feels like that was a directive from the coaching staff saying, hey, don't think about it too much. Just get it on net, because they're thinking the same thing that you're thinking, Horwat. If one goes in, it might avalanche. It might turn into a massive just sigh of relief, monkey off the back moment where Michael Bunting can then go on to being the guy he was for the Pens post-trade deadline last year. But, they're trying anything they can to get Michael Bunting going. He's working extra with Ty Hennis before practice yesterday, according to Seth Rohrbach of the Tribune. But with all that said, I'm picking Cody Glass. You mentioned he's been playing better. I agree. Moving him up to that second line with, O'Connor and Eller, I think that's going to give him more opportunities and more ice time, certainly. So I think he ends up lighting the lamp first, and I wouldn't be surprised. And I said this one time, and it was before the Sabres game and Crosby scored, so I'm hoping it happens again. I wouldn't be surprised if Cody Glass gets that monkey off his back tonight against the New York Islanders. He gets the opportunity. He'll get the increased ice time, and I think because of that, he gets his first goal of the season tonight. So I'm going to go with him, thinking it's going to be a quick turnaround on this, and he's the first of that bottom 9 to get a goal outside of Blake Lizotte on an empty net or Valtteri Puustinen on a power play.
Sure, and I don't hate that either. Like I said, he's definitely been the better player right now, so it makes sense for him to score before Michael Bunting. It's just a matter of the team needs Bunting to wake up in a big way. And, like I said, Cody Glass has been playing well despite not scoring. So there's, pros and cons to both of them, but you essentially, as a team, need Bunting to find what made him so good last year.
Now, there are 3 defensemen outside of Ryan Shea that have yet to score, but before we get into that, I just want to ask, and I have to ask this question because we saw it last year. There's no chance either Glass or Bunting pull a Jansen Harkins, right? I mean, 45 games played, 0 goals. There's no chance that ends up being the case.
No, definitely not. I think, especially not Bunting, he's going to find something eventually. And as for Glass, it just doesn't seem feasible. There's just something different about what Jansen Harkins was versus what these two are.
Yeah, Jansen Harkins didn't score, and he also never came close to scoring. Both of these guys have come close to scoring this year, especially Cody Glass has been knocking on that door almost, it seems like, in every single game he's getting an opportunity, just unable to finish. And maybe that's a thing for him too, where once he sees a puck go in, it just starts going in on a more consistent basis. But let's close out the show talking about the 3 defensemen who are scoreless. Matt Grzelcyk has yet to score a goal. Ryan Graves has yet to score a goal, and so too has Jack St. Ivany. Now, St. Ivany hit the crossbar last game, so he is the most recent to come close to scoring a goal. Who do you think scores first of these 3? And there is a realistic possibility that they combine for 3 goals on the season, but who of these 3 do you think could be the first to score?
That's tough. I'd say Matt Grzelcyk. He's getting second power play time.
He was on the first power play over the weekend too at times.
Well, I could see him just getting one of those late power play goals and letting that sort of be the leader, mostly because I don't see St. Ivany, not necessarily, not scoring, but just playing his position and not focusing on scoring, not really taking a ton of shots on nets or taking a ton of opportunities to score. And Ryan Graves, I forget how many he had last year. It wasn't many. And it's tougher to talk about defensemen and scoring. You kind of just have to guess and hope your guess is correct. And I'm just kind of guessing Matt Grzelcyk, but it's more of an educated guess with his power play usage.
Yeah, Grzelcyk leads those three in shots. He has 18 on the season, whereas Graves has 10, and so too does St. Ivany.
Okay.
I understand it's probably Matt Grzelcyk. That's the more logical answer. Give me Ryan Graves, though. I mean, the Ryan Graves comeback tour is in full swing. Not only is he playing much better defensively, not only is he playing much more responsibly with the puck, he still has those turnovers, but like I mentioned, I think on last week's episode, he's not going to completely abolish that from his game. That's always going to be in his game, at least a little bit this season because of how much of it was last year. But I mean, he's playing better. He had his first fight in a long time on Saturday night against the Montreal Canadiens. I think he scores a goal. This is also a guy that typically is shot happy. This is a guy that likes to get shots on net, or at the very least likes to throw shots towards the net. I'm thinking one of those bounces in. Now, I'm not going to go as far as I did with Cody Glass to predict him to score tonight, but you know what? I'll hitch my wagon to Ryan Graves. It burned me the first time I did it, but that was a long time ago. I'm running it back. Ryan Graves comeback tour rolls on with a goal before it does for Jack St. Ivany or Matt Grzelcyk.
I don't hate that either. He scored. I was just trying to pull it up. He scored his first goal as a Penguin pretty early. Not pretty early, but 17th game of the season, or at least his 17th game of the season, November 19th, against Vegas. I mean, maybe theirs was the game-winning goal, no less, in that shutout.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something to be had there about an early success from Ryan Graves. I remember the goals pretty clearly. Pinched in on a loose puck and just managed to beat, I believe it was Adin Hill. He's not afraid to play some offense when he needs to and when the opportunity is there for him. So maybe that opportunity just kind of slips to him like it did then. And as for the other guys, I just don't see St. Ivany pretty much finding the net that much at all this year. He could be the defenseman that ends with 0 as well. That's sort of the the role he's in, the position he plays. And Grzelcyk, it's just the logical answer. You just kind of put the educated guess into it because of power play time, and he has a bit more of an offensive, not style, but offensive mind compared to the other two.
Who needs logic? I don't need logic. I need all heart. And that's what I'm going with on this one. All heart, because, everybody knows I was high on Ryan Graves when they made the signing. I was super excited. And boy, was I wrong, because last year was one of the worst seasons of hockey I've watched a Penguins defenseman play in my entire lifetime. But he's coming back. He's building back a little bit here. And by no means is he somebody who I'm saying right now needs to be in that top 4. But maybe at some point this season, it gets to the point where you say, all right, you know what? He's been really good on the bottom pairing all year long. Let's give him that opportunity. And I think that door is open. I don't think it's time, but I think that door is open. And picking with my heart here, I'm saying it's going to be Ryan Graves. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. And remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure you make sure you subscribe, tell all your friends, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.